Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 241, We Need to Get Stronger. 03. Third Person POV. Konoha, Year 42. Makoto left Minato's apartment as she walked alone through the village, dressed in dark kunoichi-style clothing, her hair tied back with two strands hanging loose in the front. She moved forward, jumping between rooftops until she reached the training grounds on Minato's property, far from the village. That day, no one was working on the house's construction, so she took the opportunity to practice a bit on site. Kunai and shuriken were still being thrown just so she wouldn't lose her touch, each one hitting their targets pinned to trees with perfect accuracy, even the ones out of sight, making the kunai collide with each other to strike that point with an aerial spin and leap. At the same time, she landed and crossed her forearms before throwing them forward as an electric current began to emerge, quickly releasing lightning spread throughout the area, hitting all the targets with throwing weapons embedded in them. She expelled the lightning while training her jutsu, a variation of the Chidori. She looked at the scorched spots. Not just the targets, but all the surrounding trees had been struck by the lightning, burned by the heat of the electricity, leaving small black marks, before pointing her hand and generating another Chidori, with a lightning spear emerging as she cut through one of the trees and returned the spear to her hand. "This isn't enough," she murmured before stepping closer to one of the trees with a serious look. "How long are you going to keep spying on me?" she said, her tone not very pleased. At the same time, a person stepped out from behind the tree, arms crossed. It was an older man. "I thought you wanted to show off, daughter," Mazu Uchiha, Makoto's father and patriarch of the clan, said, keeping his usual stern tone and serious gaze. She looked at him for a moment, maintaining a neutral expression. "How are you?" she asked eventually. It had been a few months since they had last seen each other, following the commotion that occurred in the Uchiha clan. Her father had never really cut ties, and they met a few times away from the clan's eyes to check on how she was doing. Even though the core of the clan had even suggested eliminating Makoto due to her disobedience, he would never be part of something like that and secretly protected her. He had some ways to prevent his daughter from truly suffering because of the clan's actions, even if he had agreed with the elders' decisions. After all, he hadn't even disclosed the fact that she had the Manjikyu Sharingan and even helped by providing some information directly to Makoto if the clan planned any retaliation. "I'm handling clan matters. Soon, I'll announce that I'm no longer the leader. Let's just say they don't want me as leader anymore," he said. "But you're still the strongest, aren't you?" she asked, looking at him seriously. "I am, but that doesn't mean they'll follow me." Uchiha Madara was the strongest of his time, and even so, the clan turned its back on him. "You yourself told me that once," he said, while Makoto nodded upon hearing those words. Minato had said that on one occasion, and she had thrown it back at her father once. "I see," she murmured. "Anyway, I brought the scrolls you asked for," he said, tossing her a storage scroll containing high-level clan documents she had requested a few days earlier. She had informed her father that she needed them through a crow sent directly to the main house of the clan without anyone noticing, with Makoto having mastered skills with crows capable of storing information inside them. "Thank you," she said, looking at him in a gesture of gratitude. "How's your eye?" he asked in a serious tone. He also wanted to know about her level, in addition to the variations of lightning jutsus she had. What he really wanted to know was how she was using the Manjikyu Sharingan. "I don't use those eyes much, but I already know how one of their powers works," she said as her hand pressed forward and a Raikiri emerged without hand seals. The lightning glowed until she activated her Manjikyu Sharingan, and suddenly, the lightning began to turn purple. "As you can see, I can evolve my elements. That's one of my Manjikyu abilities," she said, as he nodded. "These abilities from those eyes are truly incredible. You also master fire better than any Uchiha I've seen." What does it look like? He asked with curiosity, pleased to see his daughter's abilities clearly surpassing those of any other living Uchiha as far as he knew. My flames turn black, she said, not hiding it from him. You're saying you released Amaterasu? He asked, curious. But she shook her head. No. Minato said that's not Amaterasu, she replied. He raised an eyebrow upon hearing that. That brat. He knows a lot about our clan. But it doesn't matter now, he said, still finding Minato a complete mystery. He had secrets that even Mazu couldn't fully understand. It was no wonder Makoto had awakened her Sharingan so early and even released her Manjikyu, being the only one among the living Uchiha. Anyway, in there are the secrets about the ancient Manjikyu Sharingan. I just hope it helps. And also some other fire-style jutsus, he said before turning around. With that, I'll be leaving. Good luck, whatever it is you're planning, daughter, he said in a serious tone, knowing his daughter was planning something big. He could feel it in Makoto's gaze. Makoto nodded as she watched him leave. She kept training there for a while longer, but without drawing too much attention after deactivating her Manjikyu Sharingan. She returned home sometime later to start reading the scrolls. Sitting alone in the apartment, she began studying the old reports of those who had unlocked their Manjikyu Sharingan, trying to decipher her second ability. Reading the most secret scrolls, she was a bit surprised and even touched that her father had given her those documents. Some even talked about Madara's era and his Susanoo, with traces of it being complete. There was also information about the stone beneath the Uchiha clan, which only people with the Manjikyu could read. But there was no mention of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that Minato had told her about. Makoto kept reading throughout the rest of the afternoon. Meanwhile, in a remote part of the Hyuga clan, where a group of people trained taijutsu, Hanabi was on lower terrain, having just performed some earth-style kicks. She stood on the uneven ground, thoughtful. Minato, she murmured. You know, Hanabi, you could infuse Gentle Fist with wind element chakra. Even generating an impact like your arrows in close combat. That would make you very powerful, Minato had once told her, over 3 years ago. As she thought about that, she recalled the 12 jutsu she had received from Tsunade. Valuable, yes, but even so, as grateful as she was, it still wasn't enough. She returned to her grandfather's house, deep in thought about what to do. Training her Gentle Fist would be useful, but she still felt something was missing. Her grandfather had prepared food, and she sat at the table to serve herself. You seem very dedicated. Didn't go out today? He asked. You could say so, Grandpa. I'm trying to increase my strength. She commented. I see. You remind me of the time I served a powerful member of the main branch. He didn't rely only on our clan's taijutsu, he said, making Hanabi look at him. This man used a different summoning, even though it was something no other Uchiha used. It was a kind of thunder fox. He could track enemies and escape quickly from there, due to the animal being extremely fast and versatile, he said, seeming to recall the past. That was about 20 years ago. He died on a mission back then, during the First Great Ninja World War. I wasn't there to protect him. It's a shame. I liked him and trained in the following years like you, wanting to become strong to protect anyone else. He commented. I see. Hanabi murmured, thoughtful about what she had just heard. She ate and rested a bit before returning to the training grounds. She looked at the storage scroll, ready to take out new jutsus to train, but didn't. I don't know what's going to happen. But, if it's for me to become stronger. She murmured, taking a risk and storing the scroll away without removing anything from it. She remembered the conversation she had had with Jiraiya-sensei many years ago, in which he told her how he had entered Mount Mayaboku through a risky attempt to summon without a contract. He was teleported there, gaining access to the world of the toads and their summoning. And that was exactly what Hanabi now intended to attempt, inspired by her grandfather's story. She was both thoughtful and determined. What could happen if someone performed a summoning jutsu without a contract was highly unpredictable. I need to get stronger, she decided. Reaching for a kunai, she cut her palm, then made several rapid hand seals before slamming her bleeding hand onto the ground. Lines of Fuinjutsu spread out in all directions from her palm. With an explosion, she vanished, leaving no trace on the training field. Some Hyuga who were nearby, training or observing her, as she was treated specially within the clan, were stunned by her sudden disappearance. At the same time, Suna was in the Shikatsu forest, engaged in a long conversation with the colossal form of Katsuyu. She looked upward, speaking seriously. This version of Katsuyu was many times larger than anything her mother had ever summoned. "You really want this?" Katsuyu murmured with a cautious but gentle tone. "Princess Tsuna." "Of course I do. I've said that for hours. I want to train in Sage Mode." "I want to learn it," Suna replied, calm and resolute. Katsuyu seemed to sigh. "You've really become a very stubborn woman, Princess Tsuna." "Your mother asked me never to teach you this, she nearly died trying to learn it," she murmured. "I'm going to learn it. I intend to surpass my mother," Suna said with unwavering determination. She was already 17. "All right. I'll accept it. But only under one condition," Katsuyu said. "And what would that be?" Suna asked. The answer came from behind her, with a sudden explosion of smoke. "It'll depend on whether I let you do it, daughter." Tsunade emerged from the smoke, her expression serious. She slammed the ground with such force that it cracked beneath her feet. A small Katsuyu rested on her shoulder, a signal that the slug had secretly informed her of Tsuna's actions. "Mom!" Suna murmured, seeing Tsunade approach, clearly furious. But she didn't back down. She looked her mother directly in the eye, serious, unwavering. Chapter 242, We Need to Get Stronger. 04. Third-person POV. Shikatsu Florist, Year 42. "What do you think you're about to do, Suna?" Tsunade looked seriously at her daughter, cracking the ground with each step as she approached, extremely angry. "I said." Suna looked seriously at her mother, beginning to speak. "I'm going to do the training, whether you want it or not." "You've tried it before, so why all this caution?" she said to her mother. "Because it's extremely dangerous and I won't let you risk yourself like that," Tsunade replied. "Please, Tsunade, calm down," Katsuyu murmured on her shoulder, seeing how agitated Tsunade was at that moment. "I need to get stronger, Mom, and I intend to do the training. Whether you want it or not," Suna said, firm and unwavering as her mother approached, the ground destroyed beneath her. Hearing her daughter, Tsunade clenched her fists tightly, small crow's feet forming on her forehead, until she finally reached her daughter, standing face to face with her. Suna looked at her, still slightly shorter than her mother, not moving an inch. "You say these words like it's something easy to master," Tsunade retorted. "I know the risk, Mom. Even so, I won't run away. I need to get stronger," Suna replied. "Because of that brat?" Tsunade said in a different tone. "Yes, it's because of Minato. I want to keep up with him. I don't want to be left behind and always be the damsel he has to save," she answered. "Nonsense!" Tsunade shot back. And before Suna could react, a punch was thrown directly by her mother, hitting her in the stomach. Suna, unable to process it, was simply sent flying backward from the impact. "Princess Tsuna!" Katsuyu exclaimed immediately upon seeing it, as Suna flew directly into the trees of the surrounding forest, crashing into them hard, destroying everything around. She flew several meters, breaking one tree after another non-stop, until chaos erupted in the area hit. She has to learn, Katsuyu. If she wants to take risks, throw her life away so carelessly. "I won't accept that," Tsunade shouted, stomping her foot. "Very well, Mom." A voice rose from the middle of the wreckage, as a piece of tree trunk was tossed aside. Suna emerged, a little dirty. "If you think you're going to stop me from doing this, you're wrong. I won't give up. Not even if I have to fight you myself," Suna said, looking even more seriously at her mother. She then simply vanished, kicking the ground and breaking it as she advanced with force. Tsunade defended quickly, crossing her arms. Suna's punch cracked with an explosive hit, making the ground around them tremble from the impact. Tsunade was pushed back a few meters, but had defended herself and stood firm. "You've got energy, daughter." "But that alone won't be enough," Tsunade said with indifference and mockery before charging at her daughter. Suna also advanced quickly toward her mother. Their fists met, generating an explosion with the impact. The two quickly destroyed the entire surrounding area. "I won't give up," Suna murmured, beginning to trade blows with her mother. "I'll never allow you to do any of these crazy things. And if you really want this, you'll have to prove it to me," Tsunade said. Thus, both began to fight as Katsuyu watched everything with concern, seeing mother and daughter begin to battle each other. At the same time, in the west, Minato was at the border between the land of rain, the land of waterfalls, and the land of fire. He had led his squad there but paused to look at the slightly affected vegetation. The remnants of war were still everywhere, with vegetation heavily destroyed, huge craters throughout the area, and even blood and decomposing bodies in hard-to-reach places. Minato couldn't help but remember the chaos that was the Second Great Ninja War, despite it having ended so recently. Some of the craters before him had been created by himself during the missions he carried out. "Captain, shall we begin the infiltration?" "Is something wrong?" one of the Umbu team ninjas asked, approaching Minato who stood there, confused as to why their captain had suddenly stopped. Their mission was to retrieve information from an informant within the Land of Rain. At first, he thought the contact might be Jiraiya, but it wasn't. He was in a village northeast of the country, and they had to advance without being detected by any of the other nation's forces. Especially those of the Rain. "Yes. Let's get ready to go," Minato said, while looking a bit longer toward one corner of the forest. He kept his gaze fixed for a moment before raising his hand, making everyone gather at one point. The 12 ninjas assembled, all from route, except for Minato. Even so, he could feel each of their eyes on him, waiting for his orders, despite the feelings present there, ready to try to execute him when Danzo gave the command. But Minato didn't care much about that now. He even found it ironic that none of those ninjas could truly kill him even if they tried to catch him by surprise. He still had the light fruit to protect him and would certainly sense it with his haki, easily anticipating the attack. "Well, we'll be entering and advancing into the Land of Rain next. I want us to go undetected by anyone so we don't fail the mission. That's why you must follow my orders exactly. But if something unexpected happens, you already know the procedure. Now, I want you to follow me," Minato said. Even with the war over, the borders were clearly still full of ninjas monitoring the area and the actions of other nations. Minato would use his observation haki to trace the best possible path, bypassing any sentries. He quickly vanished from the spot, with all the ninjas following close behind. As soon as the place was empty, a presence suddenly emerged from the ground, observing. His skin was completely white, while his eyes followed where the Konoha ninjas had disappeared. "How strange. I could have sworn that ninja could sense me." White Setsu murmured, but soon let it go and returned to the ground. "Something wrong, Captain?" one of the team's ninjas asked, noticing that Minato had stared fixedly behind them, as if he were seeing something back there, staying like that for a few seconds. "It's nothing," he replied indifferently, while turning his gaze forward again. "I can sense them now," Minato murmured internally. He had felt the presence of Zetsu spying on them. For the first time in his life, despite the presence still being a bit faint, that was proof of his evolution with the observation haki. Finally, those creatures could no longer be a nuisance to him, lurking in the shadows and spying. He just had to be careful not to let them hear anything that could hinder him. When he sensed it in the forest, his gaze instinctively dropped to the spot where that Zetsu had been hiding, and at the same time he shifted his eyes around casually, making sure no one noticed that he had sensed it, since no one else could sense them before. At the same time that Minato was secretly entering the Land of Rain through the border with the Land of Fire, the sky began to grow darker as they advanced, and the rain began to be felt, with the captain of the Umbu team easily slipping past the sentries. Meanwhile, in the forest that was home to Katsuyu, two blonde women were fighting as everything exploded with a sonic boom at each exchanged blow. Katsuyu, in her full form as a giant slug, was in the middle of the forest, watching with some concern as the trees cracked around them with the ongoing battle. Suna and Tsunade were fighting fiercely, charging at each other with their fists, trying to overpower the other. Both were injured, but there was no blood, only dirt, as any bleeding wound was healed the moment it appeared. An explosion erupted as dust rose, even the ground beneath the forest lifting from the force of their strikes as they traded punches inside. Suddenly, Tsunade was launched backward, her body crashing against a rock on the far side. "You really did learn that." Tsunade stood up, her clothes a bit torn and quite dirty, wiping her chin after the punch her daughter had landed. Suna began to emerge from the destroyed area, just as battered and dirty as Tsunade, but she looked different now. Lines extended from her forehead across her entire body. She had activated her forbidden technique, the creation rebirth strength of 100 technique. But you still haven't mastered that technique, it will definitely have side effects. Suna. Tsunade could feel that her daughter was beginning to hurt her own body. "It doesn't matter," Suna said in a serious tone. "Why go this far?" Tsunade clenched her teeth, seeing that her daughter was willing to harm herself just to get past her. "Mother, you know very well what's going to happen," she said. "Let's stop it before it happens, Suna." Tsunade replied. "Minato believes things won't be as easy as you think," Suna retorted. "If Minato leaves the village, I'm going with him," she said, while Tsunade closed her lips, disliking it, but unable to not understand that decision. Seeing her mother's silence, Suna continued. "Minato once risked his life to save me. When I was poisoned, he did the most reckless thing anyone could do in a war. He charged in alone, infiltrating the enemy's heart, all while he was poisoned himself. Tell me, Mom, what kind of person would I be if I didn't risk my life for the man I love? Just as I'm sure you would have done the same for my father?" Suna left that question hanging in the air. Tsunade looked at her, a bit surprised, before a sad glint appeared in her eyes at the mention of Dan. "I'm sorry." Suna apologized as soon as she saw that, knowing her father's death still deeply affected her mother. "It's all right," she murmured quietly before looking at her daughter, her expression a bit more at ease. "I guess you're right. You can try to master Sage Mode as long as I'm here to stop you if anything goes wrong," Tsunade said, as Suna nodded, seeing her mother agree to the training. At the same time, Suna began to release her seal, with the lines on her skin starting to recede, returning to her forehead. But as soon as the last one disappeared, the side effects of the technique immediately began to manifest. Suna looked surprised and fell to her knees the next moment, blood spilling from her mouth onto the ground. At the same time, seeing this, her gaze returned to her mother, seeing her blood with a terrified look as she began to tremble. "Princess Tsunade," Katsuyu murmured, seeing her trauma beginning to surface. "Damn," Suna muttered, running to her mother, falling to her knees because of her trauma. She had been careful the entire time not to show any blood, even though it could have won the fight with her mother. She would never stoop so low. "Suna," Tsunade murmured on her knees as she trembled. "Mom, I'm here." Suna knelt in front of her and hugged her, making sure not to show any more blood. Tsunade kept trembling as her daughter hugged her. "I'm fine, Mom. It was just a side effect." Suna tried to calm her, knowing all too well her mother's feelings. Seeing her own daughter's blood had made her trauma 10 times worse, fearing she would lose her, seeing images of Dan dying right in front of her in the land of rain. "I'm afraid of losing you. I don't want you to take such risks." "Suna," Tsunade murmured. "I'll be fine, Mom. I'm going to learn Sage Mode to become strong enough so you don't have to worry. I swear I'll master it and get stronger. I'll surpass you," Suna said as she comforted her mother, while Katsuya watched everything both from Tsunade's shoulder and in her full form nearby. Raccoon here. I think that's enough chapters about the girls for now. I wanted to give them their own training so they can become strong as well, while we now return to Minato. You might notice that Tsuna may seem weaker than Sakura, who was 16 or 17 when she used the same technique, but I didn't want these characters to reach their peak at such a young age. After all, I wanted to write them as adults at this point, which is why Minato and the others haven't fully mastered their powers yet and are still evolving throughout the story. Chapter 243, Heading to Mount Mayaboku. Third-person POV. Shikatsu Florist, Year 42. In the Land of Rain, where, unsurprisingly, the weather was gloomy with heavy rain, Minato's group had finally reached their destination. It was a small village, used only for farming. While the people sheltered from the heavy rain with umbrellas and hats, in a place outside the village, in the harvest fields, Minato appeared quietly in that place, meeting a man working alone in the rice field. "So you've arrived," he commented calmly, as he continued to strike the ground a few more times with the hoe before setting it down, while Minato raised an eyebrow. "Anyway, since you're here," he commented again, as he lifted his hat slightly, looking at Minato. The only one visible, though his men were in the nearby trees giving him support, with a calm gaze, and without saying anything else, reached into his pocket and pulled out a plastic-wrapped scroll to keep it from getting wet. He handed it directly to Minato, knowing that man matched the description he had received from the Hokage regarding the mission. Minato took the scroll and gave a signal to everyone, checking that no one was watching them, while signaling his team to retreat. Quickly, they all vanished, heading once again toward the border. The mission was simple, as they began to return to the border with the scroll now in Minato's bag. The mission had been simple, but Minato knew something was wrong. He was clearly surrounded by men who watched him at all times. That scroll wasn't going to the Hokage, it would probably be delivered to Danzu, given the relationship he had with Hanzo, according to Minato's knowledge. He wouldn't miss the chance to read it. Of course, he couldn't open it there, surrounded by root members who were watching him constantly. But he had his own tricks. He quickly began to inspect the scroll with his observation haki, able to read and distinguish each use of ink on the paper, scanning every inch of it, able to read it just by sensing how the ink was written, bypassing the seals placed to keep anyone from reading it. It was espionage information, and Minato understood it had been written by Hanzo himself, giving some intel and even answering some of Danzu's questions about certain matters, even about Jiraiya, asking about any leaf ninja in the country. Although it wasn't anything major, it was clear they really had an alliance with each other. Anyway, they advanced to the border, quickly maneuvering around it without being detected, and headed toward the Land of Fire, entering easily and going back to Konoha. Minato could still feel the presences watching them from the forest. He didn't sense just one, but at least 4 signatures along the way, feeling that faint presence underground. If he was right, Madara Uchiha would be somewhere in the Land of Waterfalls, hidden, without knowing exactly where. Either way, he would investigate it in the future. For now, he was concerned with other things and moved on, taking 2 days to reach Konoha. Minato went straight to the Hokage's office. The mission had lasted only 5 days, and when he handed the scroll to the Hokage, he was dismissed. He said goodbye to his team and headed to his apartment. He found it empty, with only a letter on the table, written by Makoto. He didn't even need to open it, sensing with his haki. As he was starting to learn to scan the entire paper, receiving information as his haki did with everything around him, just as he wanted. "If you get here today, I'm at work, Training Ground 7. Come find me as soon as you can." That's what Makoto had written, as Minato stopped to eat and change, disappearing and reappearing at the location the next moment. As expected, he had always left a seal in that place. There, he found Makoto spitting flames in the middle of the area, spreading fire around. But she was controlling herself, probably training flame control. She stopped spitting a moment later, looking at him and smiling. "You're here, finally. I've been leaving that letter every day, but the urgency started yesterday," she said, approaching him. "What do you mean?" "Some things are happening, Minato. But first, Hanabi disappeared. And when I went to look for her at the clan, they said she used a summoning jutsu on herself and vanished." "She did that?" Minato murmured, stunned. But thinking about it, he hadn't seen her activate the seal if she were in danger, as she would normally do, which indicated she might be fine. "Hold on. I'm going to see where she is, Minato said and suddenly vanished, leaving Makoto there alone. 10 minutes later, he returned by himself. She's fine, he said, although he had been quite worried upon seeing that she used the summoning seal on herself and ended up in a very strange place, which left him extremely exhausted, almost as if he had traveled to and returned from the eastern continents. Where is she? Makoto asked, still somewhat worried about her companion. She ended up being called by a strange animal, but one that suits her. She never thought of having one, but that animal matches her, Minato replied. He couldn't deny he was quite surprised, as that animal belonged to someone else in the future, or so he hoped, because if she secured the contract, that person wouldn't have it. But she's going to be fine, he added in the end, as Makoto nodded. Anyway, it's good to let your grandfather know, he said, since Hanabi had asked him to do that. Yes, he was even worried. I'll do it. Why don't you go see Kushina? She said your scroll is ready, Makoto said. That's good. Minato even lifted his eyes, pleased with that. Before you leave, I'd also like to go somewhere more isolated. Can we go to that beach? She asked, in a softer tone. Of course, I already planned to go there with the summoning scroll, he replied, and vanished in the next moment, while Makoto packed up the equipment she used during that afternoon's training and headed to the Hyuga clan to pass on the information. Minato teleported to the Senju clan in an instant, and Kushina appeared the next moment, opening the door for him, while the blonde was hugged by the redhead as he entered the house. Come, I'll give it to you, she said, leading him to her room where she prepared seals and returned. Here's the scroll. She was carrying a huge scroll on her shoulder to hand to Minato. This is great, thank you, Kushina. Minato thanked her, tucking it under his arm, as he would use it that very afternoon and didn't seal it elsewhere. Thanks for this. I'm heading out this afternoon, but let's eat something tonight, he said, and she nodded. Of course, I'll be waiting, she said. With that, Minato left Kushina's house and teleported, using the seal on Makoto's body, reappearing in front of the Hyuga clan, where she was already waiting, knowing it wouldn't take him long to talk to Kushina. Makoto, let's go, Minato said, as he vanished, heading for the southern coast. They talked a bit at the beach, while Minato waited for any sign of Guren, asking more about Suna, and Makoto said she had gone to the Shikatsu forest and was starting Sage Mode training. He was surprised by the girl's proactiveness, but also happy. Makoto continued training while she was there, able to unleash large-scale jutsu without holding back, even activating a bit of her special eye. The Mangekyo Sharingan. She didn't have to worry about anyone seeing her abilities, as she increased the power of her elements. Her black flames quickly made the water evaporate, while Minato left the beach and advanced into the sea. As soon as he sensed Guren, Minato was about 2 kilometers from the coast. The fish finally noticed him too and moved toward him, surfacing. Minato invited him to the beach, where he took out a scroll and began signing it with his blood. Guren did the same, placing his fin as the summoning signature. Thus, they created a summoning bond. The test will happen in a week. Good thing you made it in time, Guren said, while Minato felt he would have to talk to the Hokage about it. After all, he would need to be off duty. They trained a bit there, and then Minato ended up helping Makoto, looking through some scrolls given by her father. Minato was interested, as they contained information about other Mangekyo Sharingan users. But Minato knew Makoto had a very serious problem. She couldn't have a second pair of eyes to activate the Eternal, and not even the Uchiha clan had information about it, only some theories suggesting Madara could use his special eyes without going blind. However, for people like Makoto, each time she used her abilities, the damage worsened. Upon returning to Konoha that night, Minato had dinner with Makoto and Kushina at the latter's house. Nawaki also joined them, and they spent some time talking. Minato and Makoto slept at Kushina's house. In the morning, Minato was approached by a toad at the Senju clan's doorstep. Yo, the toad raised its paw and greeted him in a strange way. You're a messenger from Mount Mayaboku, he murmured, already recognizing it as one of the toads from that place, and that he might finally have his answer, after 3 weeks. Which is a bit disappointing. I thought they hadn't even considered accepting me, Minato thought, remembering how the days passed since he made the request to Gamabunta. I came to bring the response from the Great Elder.
Actually, Gamabunta spoke with the boss.
He talked to the Great Elder about your coming, but the Elder ended up falling asleep after hearing the question, for 3 straight weeks because of his age. He gave the answer this morning right after waking up and asked what they were talking about again.
Now he's waiting.
The messenger toad explained, while Minato collapsed to the ground, stunned. He didn't know that old guy could sleep like that.
Either way, he nodded.
Great. I'll go then, I just have to notify someone first, Minato said, picking up the toad. He said goodbye to Makoto and Kushina, telling them he would be away, and disappeared, heading to the Hataki clan, where he found Tsukumo sitting in the garden. Minato spoke briefly with him. After all, they were supposed to train that day, and Minato had sent a message yesterday, saying he was back in the village.
I see. That's not a problem.
You can go, Tsukumo said, and Minato nodded.
Thanks.
I'm not sure I'll be back tomorrow, but I'll let you know if anything comes up, he replied, before disappearing. Hey, don't carry me like that, the toad complained, as Minato placed him on the ground. Where can we find the entrance, he asked the toad. Only toads can pass through the entrance I came from.
You can't. Anyway, I'm going ahead.
You'll be summoned on the other side, got it, the toad explained, before clapping his hands and vanishing in a puff of smoke.
Minato waited 5 minutes before feeling his body being pulled.
Then, he too disappeared, enveloped in a cloud of smoke. In the next moment, he reappeared in a place full of frog sounds. The environment was colorful, vibrant, and he landed on the ground, looking around in awe. Even while seeing everything, his haki could sense the presence of Gamabunta and other giant, powerful toads in the distance, all of his summons.
Ah, you came.
Jiraiya's child, an elderly voice said nearby.
Minato turned to the side of the messenger toad and saw the one they all considered the chief, one of the most powerful toads of Mount Mayaboku. Minato couldn't help but smile upon seeing that. He was finally there. Chapter 244, Sage Mode. Third-person POV. Mount Mayaboku, Year 42. I am Chief Fukasaku.
Jiraiya had spoken about you, the chief toad said.
I am Minato Namikaze. Thank you for receiving me, Chief Fukasaku. Despite the 3-week delay, Minato commented.
I'm sorry, the elder ended up dozing off, as you probably already know. Anyway, let's see him before he falls asleep again, he said, jumping ahead. Minato nodded without any issue, since he didn't want to wait another 3 weeks, and they moved forward, passing by the place where Jiraiya had trained in his adolescence after ending up here through a summoning contract.
Minato was the first human to come there after Jiraiya.
Fukasaku kept jumping ahead of Minato as they crossed a bridge, around a stream, and then a waterfall, where they saw one of the great toads sitting still, eyes closed, letting the water hit his back, without his usual armor and weapons upon seeing who it was.
Hello, Gamaken.
Minato waved at him, as the toad opened his eyes and saw him there.
Hello, Minato.
Be careful not to get hurt there. I'm kind of clumsy, Gamaken said, as Minato and Fukasaku passed him, heading toward another waterfall on a nearby peak with an entrance to a cave. There were several toads of all kinds around, with Minato only recognizing a few he had actually used or summoned in his missions in bad situations for certain tasks. A female toad with purple hair approached along the path they were taking, carrying a basket full of mushrooms and larvae in her arm.
Father, so you're with Jiraiya's student? The female toad said, studying Minato.
Yes, I'm taking him to the elder, mother, Fukasaku said. Minato recognized her as Shima, the mother of the toad path. And the contents of her basket were certainly not very pleasant to Minato.
I see you're interested in our food. I make an excellent lunch and dinner. I would even ask you to come over to our home, but you're busy now.
Take him there later, father. He'll love our food, Shima said, seeing Minato's look at her ingredients, thinking he was hungry and wanted her food.
Wait, that's not it. Minato tried to deny quickly.
He didn't want the same experience that Jiraiya and Naruto had eating those larvae.
Sure, let's go, Minato boy.
Fukasaku said, ignoring Minato's protests, while the two toads said goodbye to each other.
Shima would go to her home, while Fukasaku led him into the cave.
The place wasn't big, and just after passing the entrance, they could already see the great elder standing there, sitting with a staff and showing the marks of his millennial-old age. After all, he was the one who taught senjutsu to the two hybrid Otsutsuki brothers, who were the sons of Kagaya with a human.
Elder Gamomaru. Fukasaku approached. Minato was right behind.
The old toad murmured, seeming to open his eyes. Who's there? He asked.
It's me, Fukasaku.
I'm here with Jiraiya's student, the one who might be involved with the prophecy you gave to Jiraiya boy, Elder, Fukasaku said.
Gamomaru seemed thoughtful for a moment, while Minato studied him.
Who is Jiraiya again? He asked, making Minato and Fukasaku fall to the ground, stunned by the statement.
Ah, I remember, the elder said next. The prophecy. I remember speaking one to that human.
Yes, and one of Jiraiya's students is here.
After asking to enter our land, you took 3 weeks to respond, after falling asleep. Fukasaku said. The prophecy.
The elder murmured, seeming to try to understand it, before looking at the old toad with his tired eyes and then staring at Minato for a few seconds. What is this prophecy again? He asked, confused, making both of them fall to the ground again, stunned.
What's wrong with this old man? Is he some kind of troll? Minato muttered internally.
At this rate, they wouldn't get anywhere.
I'm joking, the elder said suddenly, seeming to smile.
I remember the prophecy, about a young man among Jiraiya's students, who would grow and change the ninja world.
Or at least one of the two.
When they faced each other, if the path leaned toward good or evil for the future, everything would depend on that fight, the elder said seriously.
Yes, exactly. Fukasaku said, pointing at Minato.
Please, Minato boy, come closer, he requested, as Minato stepped forward.
So you asked permission to come here. We are here to listen to you.
What do you wish for? The old toad said, looking at the blonde human with his half-closed eyes.
I would like to learn Sage Mode.
I will need this power, Minato said directly, knowing that even with all his abilities, his jutsus, his physical strength, his Akuma no Mi, all 3 hakis, having Sage Mode would further enhance everything he had. Even though it had taken him 17 years to seek it out, he believed he was now ready to further increase his strength.
Sage Mode? Fukasaku seemed surprised to hear that, looking at Minato. I see. Difficult times are coming.
The boy before us wants to become stronger.
It's understandable, the elder said.
While Minato waited for an answer, Fukasaku, still a bit surprised, looked at the elder, also awaiting his response.
Sage Mode, he must learn it. He decided.
Then, Fukasaku, see to the boy and begin his training, the elder requested.
Even without asking permission from Jiraiya boy? Fukasaku asked. Yes.
The boy has already surpassed Jiraiya.
He is stronger than his teacher, the elder said, while Fukasaku looked a little surprised, studying the boy for a moment before nodding. I understand, very well. I will train you. He said. Minato nodded at hearing this, satisfied. Thank you, he replied. Let's go back, Minato boy. You probably want to rest. Minato nodded, but turned his attention again to the elder.
Before that, I'd like to ask a question, he said carefully.
Go ahead, the elder said informally, while Fukasaku waited. Do you remember the time when you met the brothers Hagoromo Otsutsuki and Himura Otsutsuki and warned them about their mother, Kagaya, wanting to turn all of humanity into white Zetsus, over 1,000 years ago? Minato asked directly. He wanted information about that time that he didn't know.
Maybe a point of view directly from someone who had lived through it could be interesting and bring new insights.
However, Minato didn't have much hope in this character, and he wasn't wrong. Who are those? I don't remember them, the elder said. Not even about the infinite Tsukuyomi that Kagaya cast on the world?
You were young, but you witnessed the birth of chakra in our world.
He commented, while Fukasaku looked confused by that information.
I don't remember, Gamamaru said, and Minato felt it was time to leave.
Thank you for the information, anyway, Minato said and headed outside.
The chief of the toads followed him, moving out of the cave while guiding him. The elder looked for a while at Minato's shadow disappearing along with the chief of the toads. Interesting, he murmured. But right after that, he simply seemed confused.
Ah, I forgot again,
he said before going back to sleep.
A moment later. Eat, eat. It's delicious. Shima handed Minato a plate full of larvae after he had entered their house. I'm not hungry. I actually ate before coming here, Minato tried to make an excuse.
How can you say that after I cooked with so much love, she said, as Minato looked once again at that plate, wanting to vomit just from seeing it.
Sorry, I'll owe you this one. Please, don't make me eat it. It's better if I don't overeat,
he said, on the verge of tears, trying not to be rude.
All right. Let him be, mother.
At least there'll be more left for me, Fukasaku said, as Shima shrugged, respecting the fact that Minato didn't want to eat.
Well, then, Minato boy, you want to train in Sage mode. But it won't be easy training, and you could even turn into a toad. Do you still want to go through with it? Fukasaku asked, while eating the larvae without leaving any on the plate.
Yes.
I need it, he replied, ignoring the toad's plate. I see.
I imagined Jiraiya would come here and ask this for you, but since you took the initiative yourself and the elder accepted you, and you even seem to know about our training, that's fine. I just need to send some information to the village. I'll have to take some time off, Minato said, as he would have to clear his responsibilities as ANBU leader. He would have to deal with Guren, having confirmed her presence in the Fish Clan, and learn Sage Mode at the same time. Anyway, I'll show you around, Fukasaku said, as Minato left the couple's cabin with him and walked through Mount Mayaboku. Hello, Gamabunta, Minato greeted, seeing the giant toad standing in a large lake along the path.
Hello, Minato.
You finally came, he replied in his usual grumbling tone, but with respect. Minato soon found the place where he would train, encountering several statues of humans who had attempted the same training and failed, turning into toads.
These were the ones who failed. But don't worry. If Jiraiya boy succeeded, and you surpassed him, according to the elder, you'll succeed too. After all, you might be the one destined to change the world, the child of prophecy, and I've got this. Fukasaku said, showing a rod in his hand, the one that expels natural energy from the body when touched. Minato didn't look favorably at the statues, but it also gave him a certain concern. He'd have to understand how it would work being a Logia user, since he'd need to be touched by that rod. Can we test that, if possible, Chief Fukasaku? Minato asked suddenly, while the toad looked at him confused. What do you mean by that, Minato boy? Just try to hit me with the rod, he requested, raising his palm. The toad observed him for a few seconds before nodding and striking the extended hand with his rod. To Minato's surprise, he felt an impact. He was caught off guard by the pain, even though it didn't hurt him due to his strong body. Still, he even felt some of his chakra draining, despite it not being natural energy. Interesting, he murmured, quite satisfied with that. Did you expect something different, Minato boy? Fukasaku asked. Yes. Anyway, let's try that again, but this time in a different way. Minato once again showed his hand, and it started to turn black, using armament haki as a protective layer. Fukasaku was confused to see the hand darkening, but nodded before striking with the rod. When it hit, Minato was surprised to feel nothing. There was no effect. Interesting, he said, realizing that haki could protect him even from that rod. In any case, he removed the haki, and he and Fukasaku spent a while talking, planning how the training would proceed. Minato already knew beforehand how it worked, but still listened to the chief toad. After that, Minato returned to Konoha the same day. He now needed to plan how he would stay away from his missions for 2 or 3 weeks to train with his summoning contracts. Chapter 245, Waterfall Test. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. You're saying you need 3 weeks off?
The third Hokage raised an eyebrow at Minato's request, seated before his desk in the Hokage's office.
Exactly.
I'm forming a new summoning contract, so I'd like to ask for a month off so I can go train, he said.
Does it have to be now?
The Hokage looked at him seriously.
Yes. The type of summoning I'm intending to contract is a special kind.
I can't miss this opportunity because I'll only get this one chance, Minato said.
It's a bit of a last-minute request.
But at the same time, I can't deny it's true that you haven't taken any vacation in the past year and have continued working on ANBU teams,
he said, seeming to ponder for a moment. Minato knew he was going to accept.
After all, he still wanted Minato on the ANBU team, and denying this could risk Minato simply leaving ANBU, and that was what the elders wanted to avoid while still keeping Minato under their watch.
Very well.
We'll accept your request, he said in the end, without hesitation.
Thank you, Hokage-sama.
It's a contract to become stronger, Minato replied. Very well, I hope so. After all, you becoming stronger means a stronger Leaf Village.
The Hokage murmured, and Minato left. Are you sure about letting him disappear for a month? Danzo appeared beside the Hokage the next moment. We have no choice, Danzo. Did you want him to leave ANBU?
Hiruzen commented in a neutral tone. Still, letting him leave the village now,
he said. There are still 6 months until the attack plan begins. The boy is not a threat, as far as we can tell. And we put him in ANBU precisely to keep him away from the Uzumaki country's battles. So you worry too much, the Hokage said.
I always think of the village, Hiruzen, Danzo replied.
And I think this is a mistake, Danzo muttered, walking away, while the Hokage only sighed.
Minato found a way to notify all his team members that he would be taking this leave. He had been a bit surprised by Hiruzen agreeing so easily, but it should have been expected. After all the work he had done in the past year, it was clear they were keeping close tabs on him due to the knowledge he had acquired from other nations through that scroll, because of the investigation into the wind and water countries, above the Uzumaki country,
planning a large-scale attack. Either way, Minato returned home and found Makoto training.
He explained the situation to her and how he would proceed with his plans.
I see, so you'll be leaving soon, she commented, and he nodded. That's right.
I'm waiting for Durin to summon me in the next few days through our summoning contract.
I also plan to head straight to Mount Mayaboku after dealing with Gurin. Do you know anything about Jiraiya-sensei? Makoto asked. No, he hasn't even contacted the Toads, but that doesn't matter, he replied.
I see, she murmured.
Anyway, we can't count on Jiraiya-sensei's support.
It would also be too much to ask him to go against the village. I don't want to involve him in this against his will. It would put him between the village and his students. That shouldn't be an easy situation,
Minato said, understanding the gravity.
In any case, Minato stayed with Makoto for the next few days.
While also assisting Kushina, he asked her to try improving her adamantine chains, since that was her main bloodline power and could even suppress the Kyuubi itself.
But Minato didn't want to initiate contact with the Kyuubi just yet, since that would draw attention with his chakra being released.
And the last thing he needed now was the village leadership putting Kushina into confinement.
Either way, it was on a day when he was training his taijutsu with Makoto that he felt something pulling him, causing him to stop the training immediately.
I'm being summoned by Gurin. Goodbye, Makoto. See you in a few weeks, he said. All right. Good luck, Makoto said, as Minato burst into smoke, disappearing from the spot.
He reappeared suddenly in the middle of the water, feeling the pressure of the sea around him, as he quickly looked forward and saw Gurin with water on his fin, placing a type of seaweed into Minato's mouth.
What is this? Minato murmured, feeling the effects of the sea on his fruit.
It wasn't that the water of this world affected him like it would in the world of One Piece, but it still limited him a bit, and he felt restricted with his fruit. Still, he didn't sink, he could swim and even use his fruit powers, within limits.
Gurin appeared in front of him with seaweed and offered it for Minato to put in his mouth,
and the blonde couldn't even react properly before Guren simply made him swallow it, which had a bitter taste, but at the same time, didn't help at all. He didn't understand why the fish did that. Minato quickly began forming small hand seals. He started blowing, transforming chakra into oxygen, while forming a bubble in front of his mouth and nose. Guren watched that, a bit surprised, but nodded as if saying Minato did a good job. Minato hadn't asked what the fish clan would be like, but he also didn't expect to come to the middle of the ocean. So seeing himself summoned underwater was certainly not something Minato had expected. Minato then looked forward and saw a huge structure at the bottom of the sea. This was where Guren lived, while at the same time there was a tower of rocks behind the place that rose upward and seemed to have no end. He quickly began sensing the area around him with his haki, feeling the other fish very similar to Guren. He saw Guren himself point at him and call him to follow. As he moved forward, Minato quickly paddled with his hands and feet, trying to keep up with him. Seeing that he was too slow, he began glowing with light before darting in a straight line toward Guren. Even with his fruit being limited, he could still move in small bursts, but fast enough in that moment to follow his companion. Guren led him to one of the houses that were caves. As he entered and climbed after passing through a curved tunnel, with Minato easily lighting the whole path, they entered a place where there was oxygen inside that part of the cave. Minato burst the bubble from his mouth as soon as he left the water and looked at Guren, stunned. "What was that, man?" he murmured, starting to spit out the taste of seaweed in his mouth. "Sorry about that. I thought it would help, since the elder said it helps with breathing," she said, seeming a bit confused. "Maybe for a fish, but not for a human." "You didn't even think of that, did you?" Minato muttered, unsatisfied. Obviously, that could have killed anyone else. I guess I was mistaken. Sorry for not warning you," Guren said, seeming embarrassed. "I thought you guys had a bubble or something." Minato murmured, before realizing he was just a fish. Makes sense, having an air bubble in the middle of the ocean doesn't seem all that necessary. "Forget it," he murmured in the end. "Anyway, the test will begin soon. We'll just have to wait 1 hour, that's why I summoned you," Guren said. Minato returned to the water right after that, with Guren guiding him and showing him his clan, while everyone watched the human teleporting and glowing to keep up with Guren the whole time, as Minato still had a bubble over his mouth and nose to breathe. Guren's clan was a bit strange, made of caves where the other fish lived. There were few young ones and many elderly fish, judging by the signs of aging and the tired look they had. Guren seemed very excited. The place was huge. There must have been at least 500 fish like him, all with horns, while they appeared to be talking among themselves and pointing at Minato. Minato didn't understand anything they were saying, not even when Guren tried to speak to him. Due to sound waves being limited underwater, he couldn't hear. Either way, the moment came when a fish with a white beard appeared atop a structure in the clan, emitting sounds Minato didn't understand. But Guren quickly looked at him and nodded, as if the event was beginning at that exact moment. Minato nodded and soon followed Guren, who moved upward toward the pillar that extended from the sea floor to the surface, with many other fish accompanying the elder fish upward. Minato wasn't in any region he had seen before. It seemed very far from the land of fire, as he didn't recognize any of the topography as he scanned the area with his haki. Guren had said this place was quite remote, so much so that it took him 4 days to get there, and he was very fast in the sea. Then they finally reached the surface, beneath the pillar, while Guren and many fish advanced. Minato came right behind, feeling a bit out of place among a bunch of fish that stared at him curiously and gossiped about him being a human, unable to hear anything they said, not even his haki helping much beyond sensing their feelings of curiosity. "Well, as you can see, the waterfall is ahead. We'll begin this generation's test," the elder spoke in the common language. At once, all the fish nodded their heads above the water. Minato looked for the first time and saw a massive peak that reached above the clouds. It must have been 1,000 meters high, with a large stream of water falling directly into the sea like a waterfall. "This," he murmured, feeling the strong connection this place had with natural energy. Far more than he had seen in the place where Fukasaku would train him in sage mode. "I'm going to get ready." Wish me luck, Durin said, while noticing the tension coming from the other fish who were also getting prepared. The elder seemed to be making a prayer with his two fins in front of the waterfall. Suddenly, a sound emerged above the clouds, and Minato looked up in surprise, seeing shadows like giant snakes up there.
What is that?
He murmured quickly, trying to scan with his haki, but unfortunately, he couldn't reach that far. The clouds were somehow blocking him from sensing exactly what was up there, while the waterfall kept pouring water from the clouds.
They're the guardians. They're here to witness the test. Durin shouted to Minato.
They gave us permission to hold the test, and we're going to begin, the fish said, while the elder didn't stop praying and returned to them.
Go, begin, he urged.
Immediately, the fish began advancing toward the waterfall. They entered the water's flow and began diving, leaping against the current. They had to climb over 1,000 meters. They would jump out and return to the waterfall, going higher and higher, trying to reach the clouds. Minato saw the first fish start to lose balance and fall, or even some give up after growing tired. Meanwhile, Durin was already 300 meters up, swimming quickly with 8 other fish. Several fish that Minato had seen in the fish clan also came out of the water to watch the young ones undergoing the test, certainly remembering how they had failed. Durin had said that all fish who fail stay in the fish clan forever, while those who pass go to another place that no one among them knows. Minato was completely lost in this test, but at the same time, he watched as Durin kept leaping, reaching ever greater heights, but he could also see the difficulty he was having. With every increase in altitude, 3 more fish fell.
The waterfall is pushing them down.
Minato murmured, sensing there was a pressure there that prevented them from climbing, and it increased the closer they got to the clouds.
Another fish fell soon after, then 3 more.
Now only one other was approaching 600 meters, while at the 700-meter mark, the fish behind Durin gave in, starting to fall. Only Durin remained now, as everyone else watched him rise, with increasing difficulty.
Minato could also see him using a technique similar to Geppo to assist himself. And so he continued, reaching the 900-meter mark, when Minato could feel the strain and even the exclamations from the surrounding fish, watching Durin heading toward the clouds. He simply entered them, passing the test.
Meanwhile, a thunderous sound came from the other side.
What's happening? Minato murmured. Chapter 246, The Dragon. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42.
Durin passed through the cloud line and everyone there was surprised, while the last fish that had fallen returned to the surface a little stunned due to the height of the fall, but also disappointed and depressed for having failed. At the same time, everyone kept their eyes on the cloud where Durin had disappeared.
He made it.
Minato murmured, wondering what would happen to his companion from that moment on, as he stood there watching without knowing exactly what was happening. After all, Minato didn't know either, but it was something that all the fish instinctively sought since their birth, so Minato hoped his friend was okay. Suddenly, a new shadow began to emerge from the clouds, seeming to be the same creatures from before, as they had the same shape of giant serpents, growing more and more to the point of covering a large part of the sky. Its size should be at least 200 meters. Minato wondered what those things were. He made it, one of the fish murmured. Yes, he finally went to the Guardians. How good that someone from this generation managed to reach the end of the waterfall. I'm so happy. It's a shame we won't see Durin anymore. Wherever he is, he will be better off there, accomplishing what we have failed. The fish continued to comment, while the elder asked for a moment of silence, and everyone looked at him, diverting their gaze from the enormous shadow. It seems that we had a good fruit this time. I want us to remember Durin and honor him. He was a great warrior of the fish clan, who managed to enter the end of the waterfall. Let us always remember him, the elder fish said, and everyone agreed. Minato stayed there for a while looking at the clouds after hearing the elder. So that's it. I won't be able to see him anymore. Minato murmured, with a complicated feeling, because everyone there seemed to accept that they would never see Durin again. And even he would be among them. So I will never see you again, Durin. Minato murmured, not knowing what had happened to his companion, since he couldn't even feel his haki passing through those clouds to check on him, but at the same time,
he had to be happy for his friend who managed to reach what Minato had never been able to.
Then a rumble came above the clouds, like thunder. "Minato," a voice called, catching everyone by surprise.
Minato looked stunned.
He didn't recognize that tone. It sounded like a giant creature speaking, but the feeling it conveyed.
"Durin," he murmured, stunned. "Try to find me. Past the waterfall, you must also take the test to reach where I am, otherwise, we will never be able to see each other again."
The voice demanded, while the fish were surprised to hear that, turning their attention to the only human among them. Minato looked for a moment at the waterfall, before jumping onto the water and approaching it walking this time, while keeping his eyes on the sky.
"What do you plan to do?" the elder fish murmured, seeing Minato going to the place of the waterfall.
Minato stood right in front of it, touching it with the palm of his hand, in front of the explosion of water generated by the impact of the falling water, turning his face to the nearest fish.
"I will try to pass through it," he said, and quickly jumped, answering the call of his companion with a different voice, but he was sure it was Guirin. While the shadow still remained there, stretched and making some curves over the clouds, he advanced quickly, stepping on the water. But as he climbed, he immediately felt an enormous pressure pulling him down, surprising him.
"This," he murmured and quickly moved upward, running while everyone watched. He felt the pressure trying more and more to pull him down. He began to feel an energy around the place, being the pure natural energy somehow building that environment. He had felt his own energy enter Durin before, but that didn't seem to be working on him. Maybe it had something to do directly with the Fish Clan, because it clearly wasn't working with him. There were many mysteries about this clan that he didn't know, and even the fish themselves didn't fully understand. Not even the fish reproduced among themselves, but rather something left eggs on the surface of the water, while fish like Guirin were born from there and had to live their lives until they were ready to challenge the waterfall in their generations. Otherwise, they would live underwater for the rest of their lives. And now Minato kept advancing upward while trying to understand what had happened to Guirin, who was on the other side of the cloud, and everything indicated that he was that giant creature still casting its shadow for everyone. "This reminds me of the Chinese legend," Minato murmured as he continued running up the waterfall. The legend where the fish crossed the waterfall and became a mythical creature.
It even reminded him of Pokemon.
Of Magikarp, which, after crossing the waterfall, transformed into Gyarados. But, setting that thought aside, he kept moving forward, already surpassing 600 meters and feeling the weight of the pressure pulling him down, getting worse and worse. But this was nothing for Minato. His body was powerful enough and he had several abilities that could help him. He quickly began making hand seals, while all the weights he had on his body, through Fuinjutsu seals, started being released, gaining even more lightness and quickly advancing, surpassing 800 meters. He could feel the shocked gazes of the fish down below, while he was already passing 900 meters and thus, finally emerged beyond the clouds, while all that natural energy passed through him but did not enter his body. Otherwise, he would be turning to stone, not yet having the training of Sage Mode. He kept moving forward, seeing only clouds as he advanced. Even his haki seemed not to work there, noticing that those clouds were made entirely of natural energy and had clearly been some kind of bomb for Guirin when he entered there, causing some kind of transformation as he suspected. Until Minato finally emerged from the clouds and found himself in a white sea, with the waterfall having a tip like a fountain of water coming out from the middle of a rocky peak that Minato had seen from the bottom of the sea, being a small area with some trees, like a type of oasis. The pressure began to decrease after the clouds, while Minato stopped at the tip with a sigh.
"Minato, you came. You passed the challenge."
The booming voice came from behind Minato. He turned around and his eyes widened, shocked at what he was witnessing at that moment.
"Kaido?"
It was his first thought upon seeing the serpent. Or rather, the blue Chinese dragon standing still, watching him, with more than 200 meters, just as it had appeared in the shadow of the clouds, while there were two more dragons flying over the area, a little higher up, observing, each at least 500 meters long, one red and the other pink, with only a few differences from the blue one, such as the colors, some shapes of horns and head, but still dragons like the blue one.
"Guirin, is that you?"
Minato murmured, looking at the blue dragon while analyzing and wondering how his friend had turned into that immense dragon, even though he was smaller than the others.
"Yes, it's me."
I evolved after crossing the waterfall and now I'm no longer a fish, I become a dragon through the natural energy that this place represents, according to what the two other dragons explained to me, he said. Incredible, Minato had difficulty finding words for his thoughts at that moment. He had never seen a dragon in the world of Naruto, let alone one that resembled the dragons from the world of One Piece. So this is the human you mentioned, asked the red dragon, analyzing them, while Buren tilted his head to the side and nodded. Yes, this is Minato, my companion, and the human with whom I have a summoning contract, he said. I see. He passed the waterfall test as well, so you can still remain as his contractor, the red dragon said, while Minato was still confused by all of it. Listen, Minato, Buren turned back to him, already understanding his questions. When the Fish Clan passes the waterfall, we become dragons and we can no longer return, nor even contact or explain what happened. This is the law. We only come here to deposit our eggs in the water, throwing them from the sky into the water, so that more members of the Fish Clan can be born and eventually pass the waterfall in the future, becoming dragons and continuing a cycle that has lasted more than 1,000 years, he said. Still surprised by that, Minato just nodded, listening to the information. Anyway, I was asked to go to the land of dragons with them, quite far from here, and I don't know if I'll return. He said, with Minato once again surprised, also not knowing what was in that place in this world. But, given the existence of these creatures, it was more than likely that there was a place for them like any other giant creature in this world. Anyway, I said that I had you as my friend. When they asked if I wanted to see you again, I said that I had a contract. They asked that, if you were worthy of continuing to have the contract, you should pass through the waterfall by yourself, and so you did. Buren explained. I see. I think. Still quite confused with all of it, Minato couldn't help but murmur while scratching his head. Yeah, I know. Anyway, I'm leaving now, but we'll talk more later, okay? Buren said. He seemed much more mature and wise now, which was a little strange for that impulsive fish. All right. Minato listened and nodded. Don't worry. They said that if you passed the waterfall, we could maintain contact and even the summoning contract. I will now go to see where I will spend the rest of my life as a dragon. Anyway, summon me as soon as you can, he said. Yes, Buren. Good luck, Minato gave a smile at the end. Despite everything that happened, he was happy for his companion and very proud to see the creature he had become. Now I am leaving. Goodbye, Minato. See you later, he said, immediately starting to glide with his body through the sky like a serpent. The other dragons nodded, beginning to head in a certain direction, leaving Minato behind as the three dragons advanced through the sky and disappeared. Minato stayed there for a while before disappearing, returning to the southern beach of the Land of Fire, since he was forbidden to reveal things to the Fish Clan and could not return to the sea. He fell stunned to the ground after having traveled thousands of kilometers, longer than any other journey he had ever made, feeling his chakra quickly fade due to the distance he had to teleport. And to think I would suffer from this again after increasing my chakra reserve so much. Damn! He murmured, trying to recover a little before getting up. Now I'll go to Mount Mayaboku, he decided. It was time to also train Sage Mode. Thus, Minato summoned a toad and asked to be summoned to the other side, since this way he wouldn't have to use his teleportation jutsu and his own chakra. Chapter 247, Mastering Sage Mode. Third-person POV. Mount Mayaboku, Year 42. The sound of the staff hitting his skin echoed through the place, while Minato automatically curled his body, gritting his teeth due to the pain he felt. Even though his body was strong enough to endure it, the staff still hurt. Clearly, Fukasaku had no mercy on him, and the toad was extremely strong. Focus. Remember, focus, the toad reminded him. I've only been training for a few hours. I'm trying to get the hang of it. Minato said, a little frustrated. Even so, I still have to remind you, Minato boy, the chief of the toads said. This was the first day of training with Sage Mode. He wasted no time and quickly started training, arriving at Mount Mayaboku by late morning. After seeing Buren surpass the challenge of the waterfall, he already wanted to start training the same day. Obviously, Fukasaku and his companion, Shima, tried to offer him lunch, but Minato already knew very well what he would eat. So he informed them that he brought his own food, saying he was on a diet and had to eat the nutrients he had brought as an excuse. Now, in the afternoon, it was already Minato's third attempt, after Fukasaku covered his body with oil, while he wore only shorts and concentrated, trying to feel the natural energy around the place. What even surprised Fukasaku was that Minato simply took only a few minutes for the energy to explode, rushing into his body, with him immediately losing control and starting to turn into stone. But he was quickly hit by the staff, while Fukasaku questioned how Minato had done that so quickly, since it usually took at least days or even weeks for someone learning to start feeling the energy for themselves. Minato did not answer because he did not know at the moment, as he could not explain it properly, but in fact it was thanks to the waterfall that he, somehow, developed the ability to sense the natural energy just by passing through it. He felt it there, while it itself was already trying to enter his body, but, due to not being from Duran's clan, or rather, since now Duran was a dragon from the fish clan, the energy did not transform him, but it was still there. Anyway, he continued training, returning to concentrate for a fourth time, now thinking of absorbing the energy in a different way. On the fourth attempt, Minato was already trying to avoid pulling the energy so quickly, he began to want to feel it, having much greater control over the energy, while trying to gradually insert it into his body, accumulating it very slowly. He had been trying to do this for the past few hours, but he was still not fully prepared, while receiving blows from the chief of the Toad's staff as soon as he lost control. Even so, this still surprised Fukasaku. He was evolving a lot, and for the fourth time, he was seeing the boy focused there, in lotus position, near the waterfall and the statues, feeling the energy approaching him little by little. Minato placed his mind fully focused there, while trying to increase the chakra in his body directly with the natural energy using small parts of it. He had also had an experience that was helping a lot at this moment, as he had already sucked chakra from other people to place it in himself, as happened when he had to flee the land of wind and sucked the chakra of Shikaku himself. Which was something completely crazy, even more using a seal that was even forbidden among Mito's Fuinjutsus, when he copied them from the scroll with all the knowledge she had given him in the last meetings before she passed away. He also later developed his own seal, much more advanced and safer than the one he had used before, and used it a few times as well. For Minato, merging one chakra with another was one of the most difficult things that could exist in the ninja world, with very few people having that level of control. Even Naruto developed it to a level where he could transfer his own chakra, along with Kurama's, to strengthen anyone he wanted. In an instant, he could fit Kurama's chakra, which was extremely chaotic, into the body of someone who wasn't even a Jinchuriki. That was extremely difficult and, at the same time, admirable. Naruto, because of that, was not called the child of prophecy for nothing. At the same time, Minato thought that Naruto would still be the child of prophecy with him around. The elder Toad himself had called him the child of prophecy, for he was Jiraiya's student. It seemed very generic, since any of Jiraiya's students could be this savior. But at the same time, Minato did not plan to die here after his son was born, so he would have a great influence in the ninja world. He already expected to have that after the Third Ninja War. If he would really be the child of prophecy, well, only time would tell. But there was a confidence in Minato, as he continued there, focused, placing the chaotic nature energy into small drops to mix with his chakra. Fukasaku remained there as well, analyzing Minato, watching for any change or loss of control, but saw how the boy was concentrated, starting to place the natural energy into his body much more efficiently than the previous times. This brat. He's on his fourth attempt and is already doing this? My god, the boy is a monster. Fukasaku could not help but think as he analyzed Minato there, developing control over natural energy faster than he had ever seen before. Even Jiraiya had taken weeks just to start pulling the energy, trying to feel it, but Minato, within minutes, had already done it on his first attempt and now, hours later, was beginning to understand nature energy. Minato kept having the vision of the chakras around him, continuing to slowly add more and more natural energy into his body to get used to it, while trying to encode it to fit perfectly with his chakra. Thus, he filled his body for a few more hours, but no longer received a blow from the Chief Toad's staff. Let's do this. Minato then decided to move on to the next step after getting used to mixing nature energy with his own in small amounts, making his body adapt without losing control. So, already used to small parts of natural energy mixing with his chakra, he decided to accelerate. Even Fukasaku looked surprised as he began to feel the energy around Minato advance faster into his body, starting to mix quickly, doing the same process but faster, while it was filtered and began to accumulate in Minato's body through his chakra pathways.
He's already doing that?
Fukasaku was shocked, seeing the energy filling Minato's entire body as he needed, looking for the scales and toad-like features that Jiraiya had when he used Sage Mode, but they never came, while Minato continued to absorb more and more.
Fukasaku remained there silently, observing.
Although his eyes were wide with surprise, he was still prepared to strike with the staff at any moment. Suddenly, around Minato's eyes began to gain an orange characteristic.
He's only changing the eyes.
Fukasaku murmured in surprise, while the orange color continued, with no other change anywhere else. Minato stayed there for at least 20 minutes working with the natural energy in his body to not lose control, until his eyes began to open, finally displaying toad-like features.
Really, only the eyes changed. Fukasaku said, surprised, shocked by the boy who, in just one afternoon, managed to master Sage Mode. This is madness. Fukasaku murmured, still frozen.
Minato blinked a few times, feeling his body bursting with energy, while quickly analyzing parts of his body with interest.
So this is Sage Mode. Incredible!
Minato said, as he jumped up, leaping higher than he intended, with his body strength much more powerful than before landing on the ground looking a little dazed.
I did it, he said excitedly, while Fukasaku stood there still frozen, unable to believe what that boy had been able to do. It was impossible. Looks like that waterfall was an accidental blessing.
Minato said, after all, he wouldn't have reached that level so quickly if he hadn't felt the natural chakra so strongly before when Guren transformed into a dragon, without the danger of the natural energy entering his body when he passed through those clouds.
Wait. Did my appearance change? Minato suddenly said, a little worried.
I hope it's just the eyes, he said, immediately running to the water next to the waterfall, near the statues, quickly checking if his appearance had changed more than just one thing. But only his eyes, with toad-like characteristics, were there, and he sighed.
I would hate to turn into a toad appearance. Maybe I wouldn't even use Sage Mode if that were the case. Minato murmured quietly. How did you do it?
Fukasaku finally asked, breaking his silence but still shaken, looking at Minato. Really, the only thing that had changed were the eyes.
Tell me you had already done the training before. Fukasaku said, hoping that Minato would say yes and that he wasn't some kind of monster in front of him.
I had contact with natural energy a little before coming here, but I didn't absorb it.
Still, I felt the energy, that might have helped me.
I also had in mind some theories and experience on how to facilitate the entry into my body, by fusing the natural energy with my chakra. Seems like it worked quite well while I was concentrating, slowly training a small amount before really placing a large amount of natural chakra until I managed to reach Sage Mode.
Minato explained. Fukasaku nodded, not without feeling a bit of envy.
He himself had taken weeks to master the first part, months as Jiraiya had done, but that boy, in just a few hours.
Anyway, this is incredible. Minato said, wanting to test his strength while heading toward a rocky area.
But the next moment he felt something wrong and his body soon began to collapse, as he lost control.
Damn it, was the only thing he managed to murmur before feeling a staff hitting his back, making him groan in pain.
The natural energy was immediately expelled from his body, and his eyes returned to normal.
You're not used to it. You can't lose focus with that excitement, Fukasaku explained, seeing Minato's mistake, which was normal. I guess you're right.
Minato got up, grumbling and scratching his back where he had been hit.
Anyway, let's finish here.
You should start focusing from tomorrow and get used to Sage Mode so you don't lose control, he said, and Minato nodded as they began returning to the house where Shima was waiting for them. When they entered, Shima was surprised and excited at the same time.
Good, you're back, she said, already with the food ready, but found it strange as Minato scratched his head with a slightly embarrassed smile and Fukasaku stood there, looking downcast and depressed. What is this? What happened?
She asked, knowing something was wrong.
Wait. Shima's scream echoed throughout Mount Mayaboku as she received the news from Fukasaku that Minato had mastered Sage Mode in just a few hours. Chapter 248 Theories about Sage Mode. Third Person POV. Mount Mayaboku, Year 42. Weeks had passed since Minato's first day training and adapting to the Senju mode. He was the first to perfect the mode in its best form, while only his eyes had changed and his body had remained completely human, but that was only externally, while the powers Minato now possessed had been elevated to an even greater level. He had been training day after day maintaining that form as best he could, and now he understood why the original Minato only used it on a few occasions, as it was a very exhausting technique while he also had difficulty controlling natural chakra. But this Minato was different. He certainly had some difficulty, but the fact that he had already mastered Sage Mode from the beginning revealed that he had unlimited potential. And so it was, the days went by, while Minato trained from circulating Sage Mode on his own body. At the same time he kept Fukasaku along with Shima on his shoulders, the same way Jiraiya did when using this mode. Minato could choose the much safer second option if he had to maintain Sage Mode for a long time, while the two toads would keep the natural energy circulating the whole time, entering them as receptors to pass their chakra to Minato, not needing to worry about him drawing energy, while Minato could just focus on the enemy. But Minato wanted more than that, trying to use a theory that Jugo himself had, having a natural body to attract natural energy. Minato wanted somehow to start attracting it in that way, even if it was just one point in his body. But for that, he would first need to find a way for his body to absorb natural energy automatically, while at the same time his subconscious had to learn to control it in a way that Minato wouldn't even need to worry about it anymore. They say someone becomes a master in something after 10,000 hours of experience, but Minato would maybe need 100,000 hours or even a million to develop this in his brain. He wanted the energy to circulate his body all the time, entering and exiting, something that should be impossible, but it was still a theory Minato was studying. If he could maybe develop it, he would have unlimited chakra and one even more powerful than common chakra. Minato looked at his hands at that moment, as he opened and closed them, testing the energy circulating through all his chakra veins. His thoughts continued in the direction of his theories, thinking about how to implement them while he also had thoughts focused on his other powers. Natural energy had certainly strengthened his strength. But there was still the matter of his hakis, fruit, and his naturally powerful body with the 6 marine styles. You're thinking about what, Minato? It's your turn to throw the rock. A booming voice came as Minato looked at the giant toad who had spoken, none other than Gamabunta. It wasn't just him, but other giant toads were waiting for his turn. After all, he had agreed to play a certain game with them. Ah, all right. I was a little distracted, Minato said as he approached a group of rocks near them. Everyone waited as Minato, using Sage Mode, since his eyes were those of a toad, picked up a huge rock making Minato look like an ant while the rock itself weighed tons. However, that didn't stop Minato from simply lifting it with ease. He prepared by going to a giant line with all the toads still waiting, and Minato didn't even need to look at where he should aim, as he simply took a few steps back and ran toward the line. Before stepping on the line, he hurled the enormous rock flying far away while everyone watched it soar before crashing into an empty area filled with other rocks, surpassing them as it hit the ground a moment later and rolled several dozen more meters before coming to a stop. Damn, the kid is beating us. Gamabunta wasn't in a good mood about it. All the toads agreed, while another toad began moving forward to where Minato had picked up the rock, as he stepped away from the throwing line. The same happened with the other toads. They threw rocks in that direction without crossing the line, only to gain momentum while their rocks flew a few meters before falling to the ground, landing among the stones. The toad who had thrown the rock with his toad-like feet seemed in a bad mood as he left the place, and another toad was grabbing a stone to throw. This was a simple game, where the one with the farthest giant rock won. Minato stayed among the toads for a while the last one threw, but it didn't go well. Victory goes to Minato Namikaze, a small toad exclaimed from atop a rock, announcing the winner. Some toads began collecting on bets placed, while another group was watching the rock-throwing competition, gambling all sorts of things that seemed valuable, even larvae and worms. Like Miss Shima, who was there gathering all kinds of such food, happy to have some good ingredients for a nice dinner, having coughed for Minato and bet on him.
Minato left them aside and advanced out of the place, while the toads still seemed quite embarrassed for losing to a human.
Damn, how clumsy I am, one of them muttered. You're not, anyway. You did really well, Gammon, Minato said as he walked out of the area.
He went back to training again in an isolated part, recharging his vital energy, while punching some spots there, destroying anything that was in front of him. He quickly began to create a layer of haki over his left arm while punching as well. The destruction began in that area with debris falling everywhere as Minato moved on to the next target immediately. It was only after a while that he stopped, with everything scattered, while his left arm was black, the right filled with natural energy, but neither of them had the same characteristics. How strange, Minato muttered. His perception was greater and that enhanced the observation haki even more, but the armament haki was a bit different. First, it wasn't that Minato made the natural energy disappear when wielding haki on his arm, but it decreased rapidly.
No wonder Fukasaku's staff didn't work when hitting a region with armament haki. His strength became slightly stronger, resulting in a bit more destruction from the left arm than the right.
Minato still didn't fully understand how these two forces worked, especially since armament haki is something from another world, not to mention that both haki and chakra were supposed to come from the spirit of the being. It was likely these energies couldn't merge. Second, Minato didn't know if it was even possible to combine Sage Mode with the power of haki, with both powers intertwining to the point of uniting and sharing their forces in harmony. Minato could feel the chaos the two energies created when trying to unite them in a part of the body. But the armament haki always overpowers natural energy and makes it retreat. No wonder the latter decreases the moment I use haki, Minato muttered, returning to think about it. There were several theories being built in his mind, one of which was that he could use his own haki to reduce the pressure of natural energy in his body, maintaining better control.
What are you whispering about over there, Minato boy?
Fukasaku's voice reached Minato as he turned to see the elder toad standing nearby. Not that Minato hadn't noticed him before, but it didn't stop him from thinking out loud, trying to work through his chakra issues.
Some things that are still difficult for me, Minato commented. Are you talking about your black arm that makes all the natural energy retreat? That's certainly something we've never seen, Minato boy.
Did Jiraiya know about this? He asked, already having seen Minato use this ability a few times. And surely, seeing it make natural energy flee Minato's body on its own was something inexplicable for any toad who trained in natural energy.
Minato shook his head. No.
This ability is something I developed after the last time I saw him, Minato said.
Interesting.
Either way, you haven't stopped thinking about this since the early days. Maybe you should practice something else while the answer comes to you later.
Minato had poured most of his effort into this, trying to develop haki with natural energy over the past few weeks. I know, it's just, he murmured stubbornly.
This was a challenge for him, and he intended to overcome it.
You're the greatest Sage Mode user in the history of Mount Mayuboku.
I never wanted to say much about it so you wouldn't get arrogant, but you don't even seem to care about that. Instead, you intend to get even stronger with all these crazy theories and powers I've never seen.
Fukasaku said. Minato looked at him for a moment and sighed. I think you're right. I'll rest a bit, Minato decided. Then let's go to my house. Shima got a lot of ingredients from the bet you made today.
The food will be unique and delicious, he said excitedly. I'll pass, Minato simply said, as he had his own food prepared, not wanting to eat Shima's food under the pretext that he was on a diet. Either way, they went to Fukasaku and Shima's house, while the female toad served food to her husband, and Minato ate his ramen, which had nothing to do with a diet, though the two toads didn't know that. What a waste, you not eating mom's food.
It's delicious, Fukasaku said while eating all the larvae and worms in the stew.
No, thank you, Minato simply said, ignoring that thing on his plate and focusing on eating his own dinner.
You know. He wiped the last noodle from the bowl and turned back to Fukasaku. I think you're right. Maybe I should train something else while I try to figure out the answers to my questions in the future. So I want to focus on something different.
Like what? The toad asked.
I want to summon a friend tomorrow. He's my second summoning contract, he said. You have another contract? Shima looked surprised, just like her husband, while Minato nodded to both. Yes, I haven't seen him in a week. I wanted to know how things are going, he said, and Fukasaku nodded. Alright, you can summon him here, just don't let him damage any important places like the larva nest, the big waterfall where the toads bathe, or the Elder's Cave. He spoke while Minato nodded. Alright, I'll keep that in mind, he said in the end, as he went to rest, preparing to summon a dragon for the first time. Chapter 249, The Little Itachi? Third-person POV. Mount Mayaboku, Year 42. How could I summon him now? Minato wondered, looking toward the center of the place. Something wrong, Minato boy? Fukasaku asked while Minato was thinking. It's just that the summoning is a bit different, because it can fly. From the last time I saw it, and its body is very large. Minato murmured, still wondering whether he should summon it on the ground or in the sky. What kind of summoning is this? Fukasaku asked, curious. I got it. He decided, spotting one of the peaks as he prepared to move toward it. Before leaving, he answered Fukasaku while looking at him. It's a dragon, he said and shot off the next moment. A what? Fukasaku shouted, stunned, as Minato was already moving far ahead, heading toward one of the mounds. He began to climb to the highest point. What do you mean by dragon, Minato boy? Fukasaku shouted as Minato reached the top of the mound. Then, he jumped and advanced even higher with a leap and jeppo through the air. After a cut on his finger, he began to perform the sequence of hand seals while finishing by placing it directly into the air below him, activating the summoning jutsu as his chakra began to spread due to the amount Minato needed to summon Guren. A huge explosion of smoke arose, invading the entire sky and catching even the unsuspecting toads off guard from all directions. The smoke continued to spread, following a line and curving many times. Fukasaku looked in all directions, seeing the smoke draw a kind of serpent in the sky. What? He couldn't believe it. Finally, it began to dissipate and, in its place, a huge line of blue scales appeared. A dragon over 200 meters long showed up, with almost all eyes of Mount Mayaboku on the sky at that moment. Minato. Guren's voice finally emerged after the smoke had completely cleared, speaking in a serious tone. But Minato could feel the surprise and even excitement in his companion's voice. So, you really summoned me. He spoke again, with Minato finally landing on his head, while the blonde looked into the enormous eyes staring at him, admiring the dragon that had appeared there once more. It's been a while, Guren. Minato said. Where are we? Guren asked, looking down and seeing several toads. Most of them tried to flee, frightened by that enormous winged serpent. Only the oldest and largest ones observed cautiously, but all were certainly wary of the type of creature that appeared on their land, with some not even able to recognize what that flying serpent was. We're in safe territory. This is the capital of the sages. As you can see, there are no enemies here. Minato said, while Guren analyzed the environment and then returned his attention to his companion. I see. So you summoned me here, he murmured, while Minato nodded. Yes. I wanted to know how you are. And I could only summon you here, where no one will see your true form after all, it's quite intimidating. Minato explained, trying to hide the fact that he could summon a dragon for now, while the dragon understood. Of course. It's been weeks since we last saw each other. I ended up going to the land of dragons. There, I'm receiving training from the elder dragons. There are so many of us there. He commented. I see. Are you available now or would you prefer to talk another time? Minato asked, scratching his head. No, I'm fine now. We can talk. After all, we're not following any lesson from the elders at the moment. Since you summoned me, I'd also like to take the chance to talk about where I'm living, he said. Sure. Let's go somewhere else after all, the toads seem a little scared and cautious with your presence. Minato said, and Guren nodded. The dragon began to glide through the sky, moving slightly away from the main area while they looked for a calmer place.
Guren remained floating in the sky while Minato stood on a cliff, talking with him, spending the rest of the day with the human conversing with the dragon.
Guren ended up sharing a lot of information about where he was living and about the land of dragons. This place was nothing less than on the other side of the world. A mysterious and hard-to-reach land, where dragons serpentine through the sky with power capable of destroying anyone who tried to disturb them. They weren't ones to invade territories, they just wanted to live in peace. They even had floating islands in the sky. As Guren described, they possessed powers that could levitate large areas of land, turning those places into their own homes. Minato was astonished by this information as he listened to Guren.
The dragon didn't mind sharing such things, and Minato was deeply impressed, learning about a place and even a species he had never encountered before. Dragons were something new to Minato, after all, they weren't something he had seen in Naruto before. So, certainly, seeing one right in front of him and as a companion was a full-course experience for Minato. In the end, dragons had always remained hidden, and while those who tried to study them often ended up dead, no one really knew how they came to be either. Minato had the answer about the waterfall and was sure he could earn good money writing about this information, but he wouldn't. Instead, he saw beings who seemed to just be living peacefully on the other side of the world. Still, Minato thought how impactful it would be to appear on the battlefield alongside a dragon as his companion, dominating the skies. He spent the entire day with Guren, also talking about his experiences there on Mount Myaboku, such as his constant attempts to integrate Sage Mode with other powers simultaneously, and his search for a way to receive natural chakra while keeping it unconsciously integrated into his body.
You'll definitely succeed, Minato. No matter how impossible it seems. You've always done things that defy logic. Guren stated, as Minato nodded. Thank you for your words, old friend. He smiled. I should go now.
It's almost time for my lesson with one of the protectors.
Guren informed, and Minato felt the moment.
The dragon burst into smoke and vanished from the place.
Minato simply sighed. He had finally taken a day off.
Even though his original intention was to train with Guren and understand the best ways to summon him, he got carried away with the dragons, which opened up many questions. In the end, Minato returned to Fukasaku, who had remained in the same spot in silence, with many toads watching Minato from hiding, wondering what that had all been. The old toad didn't say anything in particular and simply followed Minato back in silence, while the small toad gave occasional hops to keep up with Minato walking. But it didn't take long before the toad couldn't hold it in and questioned Minato about what had happened that day.
You didn't tell me you had a dragon.
It's a bit hard to explain, but I did warn you before, remember?
You just gave a heads up and summoned him. That's the same thing. Anyway, dragons are proud beings that don't like to mingle with anyone. How did you even find one, and even more, form a summoning contract? Do you know how crazy that sounds?
Fukasaku muttered. He was sure that dragons were the most powerful among all species aside from the Bijou.
Really?
Minato asked, with a small smile.
Of course. I've never seen a human with a contract with a dragon. In fact, I've never seen a dragon in my life.
And now I can see they certainly live up to their reputation, he muttered about the rumors. Fukasaku had been taught by his master a long time ago. When they spoke about other species, his master once fought a dragon and came out gravely wounded, even while in Sage Mode. He was unable to face the creature directly, which had been flying near Mount Myaboku.
I see. Minato murmured.
In the end, they returned home, with Shima waiting for them and questioning why there had been a dragon in the sky that day, scaring off all the worms and larvae she was looking for to prepare dinner. Minato ate his own ready-made meal and stayed a few more days training all kinds of techniques, even his fruit and haki. While there, the Toad Kingdom would report only to Jiraiya about his abilities. Minato also believed that his sensei would keep his powers a secret, even from the village. He even tried to train Conqueror's haki. Minato tried to feel it, but he couldn't manage to release it. The last time he did, or rather, the first time he noticed himself doing it, was through a massive burst of fury when he let someone escape. There were also some reports from Camp 12 and the medical camp during the war, with people fainting under the same effect right after he left, and in all those moments, he had been present in the camp and filled with rage, even though he never really noticed it. It seemed that anger was the feeling that would unleash it, but after several attempts, no matter how much he tried to force it, nothing happened.
This is bad. Minato murmured with a sigh. I haven't had any success. He returned to Shima's home and made an announcement to the two toads.
I'll be leaving Mount _______ tonight, he said in a serious tone.
What? You're really leaving? Shima asked, surprised. Fukasaku also looked surprised. Yes. It's time for me to return. My time is up, and the village might already be questioning my absence. That was the agreement.
And that time has finally come, he answered, with both toads nodding to him.
All right.
You are certainly already powerful, even surpassing all your former masters.
Jiraiya will be very proud when he learns of your progress. I can see that you are the child of prophecy. Fukasaku said, as Minato nodded. Thank you.
Tell him that, no matter what happens, he'll always be my sensei. Minato said with a serious and strange tone.
Shima and Fukasaku raised an eyebrow at hearing that, but didn't question further what Minato meant by it. In the end, Minato then left Mount Mayaboku, reappearing in his apartment and finding Makoto in his bed.
The woman was startled with him almost thrusting a kunai at the neck of the person who had suddenly appeared there, but Minato was quick enough to set it aside and hug her.
What do you think you're doing? She huffed, blushing, after he suddenly attacked her face with a kiss. What?
You were always complaining I'm not romantic sometimes, he gave a mischievous smile. She seemed to blush even more and then moved her legs, crossing them behind Minato's back and pulling him toward her.
What? Minato was a little surprised by that as he leaned into Makoto. Minato, you're being bold.
But how far are you going with this? She challenged him. Minato meant to tease, but ended up waking a dormant Uchiha dragon with that and found himself sweating in that bed for the rest of the night.
And that night, Minato and Makoto may have, perhaps, sparked the birth of Itachi Namikaze.
The next day, they acted like nothing had happened as they headed to the Hyuga clan. She finally came back 2 weeks ago. Let's see how she did with her new summoning.
Minato commented as they walked.
Hanabi had already returned from retraining and had shared the training field with Makoto for the past 2 weeks.
Yes, you'd be surprised at what she learned. Makoto said. Great, I want to see her. And Kushina too, since we have no news from Tsuna other than that she's still training.
I'll speak with the Hokage later about my return and resume missions.
Minato commented as they approached the place. Chapter 252 Mangekyo Sharingans? Third-person POV. Mount Mayaboku, Year 42.
The trees swayed as flashes ran toward a region on the border of the land of waterfall while a dozen other flashes chased after them.
Commander, one of the ANBU ninjas said. Yes. We have to stop them.
Lumen said from behind his mask as he advanced with his men after them. They followed the two individuals they had located crossing the border, which made Minato's ANBU team quickly pursue them, as they were unidentified ninjas. It had been a few months since Minato had returned from his training with his summons and had taken leadership of his team once again, with the village always keeping him stationed in the western part of the Land of Fire in search of missions. They also kept his entire team made up of Danza's ninjas just to ensure Minato was kept away from more important village matters, with the Hokage making sure Minato didn't get involved with the Uzumaki clan attack as they had predicted after he saw the information exchanged between the Sand Village and the Mist Village. Minato knew this very well and kept a low profile while appearing to be a good soldier to the Hokage. One who simply carried out missions and didn't get involved in other matters, all while acting in the shadows.
Minato, as they predicted, would certainly not let the Uzumaki clan be destroyed like that.
He had many schemes right under the Hokage's and the three elders' noses without them even realizing. Minato continued moving forward with two plans. In case one failed, he would try the other. Either way, he was now on a mission, following two unknown ninjas while his group tried to catch up to them, but they were extremely fast.
Go, Poisson!
Lumen gave the order, and a member of the Aburame clan who was part of the team quickly released a group of insects flying after the pursued, who were wearing cloaks to hide their appearance. Minato had noticed their emergence through the sensory field and haki he possessed, noticing their route before they entered the Land of Fire. But once they did, Minato activated his team, intercepting them and forcing them to be surrounded while pushing them back toward the border of the Land of Waterfall. The insects quickly advanced at a surprising speed, with Minato not wanting to catch them immediately, as he felt something very strange about the two. Something that made him furrow his brow for a moment. He really wanted to understand if these were truly the people who were supposed to be dead. The moment the insects got close to them, one of them turned, forming hand seals before inflating his cheeks inside his hood. A massive burst of fire erupted from there, shooting directly at the approaching insects, consuming them in flames and killing them.
After all, insects from the Aburame clan had a weakness, fire element. My insects!
Poisson, the codename of the Aburame clan member, growled as he saw his companions being killed.
These jutsus, there's no doubt. Minato knew which clan those types of jutsu belonged to, and his theory through haki presence was correct.
Minato saw those two as a bomb full of negative energy. There was resentment, anger, and fear in them, but it wasn't directed at the Konoha group, as they seemed frustrated. Either way, Minato decided to act, grabbing a kunai and throwing it directly at them, while they seemed alert. Minato reappeared in front of them before they could react, launching a kick just as they tried to use their own kunai to deflect his, unaware of the kunai's special ability at first. Minato kicked the first one, sending him flying like a bullet to the ground, then spun his extended leg to strike the second. But this one made a move that surprised Minato, dodging the attack. Even though Minato hadn't put much force into the kick, he was surprised that this one managed to predict his strike. An explosion occurred to the side as the first body hit the ground, while the second managed to land off to the side, with Minato landing in front of him. Minato narrowed his eyes as he watched the hooded ninja emerge safely from the explosion, landing next to the one who had dodged Minato's blow. In the next moment, 11 more ninjas landed behind Minato, all wearing ANBU masks like him, analyzing the two ninjas.
That jutsu.
You're Minato Namikaze, the one who mastered the second Hokage's jutsu and is known as the Yellow Flash of Konoha, one of the heroes of the Second War. The one who had dodged spoke with a tone of anger and frustration. Minato could feel it from both of them. There was a strange feeling they held toward him, from what he could sense, and it made Minato narrow his eyes.
You too, he murmured. He wasn't surprised someone recognized him after using his Raijin. After all, he was the only one in the world who could perform it. Commander, let's finish them, one of the ANBU said.
Yes.
Minato replied quietly.
This was their mission, to protect the borders of this region, and these ninjas had invaded the Land of Fire. Anyone else in his place might not even have noticed them, given how proactive they were with camouflage, but Minato had his own special tricks. We should use it, the one who had dodged said again. Are you sure? The second asked. Yes, we can't escape him without using our powers. Besides, it's time to see if we're truly stronger. He replied to his companion. Their eyes began glowing red beneath their hoods, and Minato felt something coming at him the next moment, black flames attempting to burn him.
Amaterasu.
Minato murmured softly, dodging the attack with relative ease as he vanished and reappeared near the kunai he had thrown earlier.
The black flames immediately struck a tree, which began to be consumed, surprising the ANBU stationed there.
The flames that never went out, they were extremely dangerous, and not even Minato knew if his intangibility could stop them, something he didn't want to test. Either way, he could handle it by relying on the flames being rather slow compared to his reaction speed. For him, dodging them would be easy, but for others.
What is that?
None of the other ANBU knew what it was, while the tree was completely consumed.
Don't touch those flames. Minato gave the order.
Even if they were spies who might try to kill him one day, he was still the team leader and needed to act accordingly.
Minato sensed a jutsu being cast as he saw, through haki without even looking, the enemy forming hand seals and launching a powerful fire jutsu in his direction.
Minato dodged away from their using Jeppo, not wanting to counter the jutsu with another jutsu that would distract him, so he simply evaded, as one of the hooded enemies advanced with his team, quickly attacking, while the one who had launched the fire jutsu cast another jutsu at the ANBU team. Minato grabbed his kunai and threw it at them as the fight began, protecting one of his teammates after the enemy created an opening.
As expected, you seem to be everywhere,
the hooded one with red eyes said, before his eyes glowed even more intensely. Knowing what was coming, Minato kicked his teammates away from the area, then vanished with a teleportation jutsu just as Amaterasu was launched at point-blank range toward him, hitting nothing but air thanks to Minato's Raijin.
Tisk, the ninja seemed frustrated, searching for Minato while he was already back in the area scorched by the earlier fire jutsu.
One of the ninjas fighting the other hooded figure managed to slash an ANBU across the neck, killing him after paralyzing him.
He used Genjutsu, another Konoha ninja muttered upon seeing his comrade dead.
He had been paralyzed right in front of the enemy during the attack and died without resistance.
Be careful. Go, they quickly advanced against the two, as an intense battle of jutsus, kunai, and taijutsu broke out right there.
Minato didn't waste any time either. From the area of flames, he threw his kunai and immediately formed hand seals. His kunai rapidly multiplied into hundreds, striking all over the place and turning the area into his teleportation field. Even though the ANBU were Konoha's elite ninjas, and this group in particular was one of the first trained by Danzo in his program to turn them into perfect machines for missions and assassinations, they saw the clear disadvantage they had against these two, who possessed more speed, strength, and skill than all of them combined. Minato appeared as another member of his team was caught in another genjutsu, paralyzing him. The blonde jumped in between to intercept the kunai, preventing it from reaching his teammate.
You're fast, the ninja remarked.
But you can't save everyone at once, he said before vanishing and reappearing elsewhere on the battlefield,
where a Konoha ninja was nearly struck by Amaterasu.
Minato appeared just in time, with time almost standing still, and grabbed the ninja, pulling him away as the black flames began advancing toward the trees. These guys, they're abusing the ocular power of the Mangekyo, he thought as he vanished, leaving the ninja behind, and returned to the paralyzed one who hadn't escaped the genjutsu from the earlier Sharingan user, saving him just before he was killed a second time.
Who are they? One of the ANBU ninjas was extremely cautious of the strength these two possessed.
Those eyes, they're Sharingans, another exclaimed.
What? The Uchiha clan?
How? More questions began to arise.
They're not from Konoha's Uchiha clan, but they are Uchihas,
Minato said with a serious look.
Wait, Commander, are you saying that? Another ANBU murmured. Many Uchiha ninjas disappeared during the war without their bodies ever being found.
And clearly, two of them are standing right in front of us,
Minato said, remembering how he had investigated the disappearances of various ninjas, and among them, most were Uchiha.
Obviously, for ninjas to vanish like that, it had to be the work of White Zetsus, as he could never find any evidence to prove this point. Madara was likely gathering Uchiha to create heirs before Obito, so it was obvious what was happening here.
And both of them had the Mangekyo Sharingan, which made them even more dangerous.
Without warning, one of them looked at everyone, and Minato sensed what was about to happen as a powerful genjutsu was activated, catching everyone who was looking at the Sharingans, which was all of them.
Minato disappeared and couldn't take anyone with him, as he couldn't afford to leave any witnesses to the powers he was about to use.
All the ninjas began to fall, paralyzed as they lost consciousness, while Minato reappeared in the same spot he had teleported from, watching as all his comrades collapsed to the ground, only 10 remaining, with one already dead.
He dodged your genjutsu.
Just as expected from our former classmate and the most talented of our generation, the one who had used Amaterasu commented.
Minato looked at them without saying anything.
Now he'll have to fight with the bodies of his fallen comrades, the other said, proud to have activated such a wide area genjutsu.
Not necessarily, Minato replied, before forming a hand seal.
All the fallen bodies around him were sent away the next moment, including the dead body, since they all carried one of his kunai, as was standard for teams he led.
Now it's just the three of us,
Minato said as he faced the two Uchiha. his former comrades, who had found Uchiha Madara and become strong candidates to be his heirs.
If either of them had the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, it would be a big problem.
That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze.
Thanks so much for listening.
As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well.
See you in the next one.